Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something powerful tonight. I want you to understand this clearly because a lot of women don't realize the kind of impact they truly have. When you're not like other women, it shakes a man. It doesn't confuse him, it challenges him, it makes him stop, think, and reassess everything he thought he knew about relationships. Being different challenges a man's expectations and routines in ways most people never talk about. When a man meets a woman who doesn't follow the usual patterns he's used to, it forces him to slow down and pay attention. Many men move through relationships on autopilot, responding to behaviors they've seen over and over again. They expect certain reactions, certain emotions, and certain levels of tolerance. But when a woman doesn't give him what he expects, his comfort zone is disrupted, and that disruption creates awareness. A man often assumes that if he pulls back, the woman will chase. If he becomes inconsistent, she will question herself. If he delays commitment, she will wait. These expectations are built from experience, not arrogance. But when a woman refuses to play into these routines, his sense of control begins to weaken. She doesn't panic when communication slows. She doesn't beg for reassurance. She doesn't over-explain her feelings just to keep the connection alive. Instead, she remains steady, focused, and grounded in who she is. That steadiness is unsettling to a man who is used to emotional predictability. What truly shakes him is not defiance, but self-assurance. A woman who doesn't react impulsively forces him to reflect. He starts asking questions internally. Why isn't she chasing? Why isn't she upset the way others were? Why does she seem at peace even when things are uncertain? These questions interrupt his routine thinking. He can no longer rely on familiar patterns to gauge his importance. For the first time, he has to look at his behavior instead of her reactions. When a woman values her time and energy, she naturally disrupts a man's expectations. She doesn't rearrange her life to fit into his schedule. She doesn't cancel her plans to be available at his convenience. She shows up fully when she chooses to be there, not because she feels obligated. This kind of presence changes the dynamic. The relationship is no longer driven by fear of loss on her side. Instead, it introduces the possibility of loss on his side, and that possibility demands his attention. Men are deeply affected when routine stops working. When charm, distance, or silence no longer produces the same results, it creates uncertainty. And uncertainty leads to thought. Thought leads to emotional engagement. He starts noticing details he once overlooked. He becomes more aware of her absence, her standards, and her consistency, not because she demanded it, but because her difference required it. Being unlike other women doesn't mean being hard or unapproachable. It means being clear about who you are and what you accept. That clarity removes confusion from her actions and places responsibility back onto him. He can no longer rely on habits to maintain the connection. He must decide whether he is willing to rise to her level or risk losing access to her entirely. And that decision is what truly shakes him. Self, respect, and boundaries create emotional impact in a way that words never can. When a woman truly respects herself, it shows in how she moves, how she speaks. and especially in what she refuses to tolerate. This isn't about being aggressive or demanding. It's about being grounded in your own value. A man can sense when a woman knows who she is. He can feel it when she doesn't bend herself out of shape just to be liked or chosen. That energy changes everything. Boundaries are powerful because they introduce structure where chaos usually exists. Many men are accustomed to testing limits, not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity and comfort. When there are no clear boundaries, behavior becomes casual, inconsistent, and careless. But when a woman calmly establishes what she will and will not accept, she shifts the emotional balance. She doesn't argue endlessly. She doesn't threaten. She simply removes herself from situations that don't align with her standards. That quiet decision carries weight. What impacts a man emotionally is realizing that access to a woman like that is not guaranteed. She doesn't punish him with silence. She protects herself with distance. She doesn't demand respect. She requires it through her actions. When he sees that she won't tolerate disrespect, mixed signals, or emotional neglect, something changes in his mind. He understands that he cannot operate on autopilot with her. Every action has consequences, not because she is controlling, but because she values herself too much to accept less. A woman with boundaries doesn't explain them repeatedly. She states them once and lives by them. That consistency creates emotional pressure. A man starts to realize that he cannot manipulate the situation or rely on apologies without change. He feels the difference between being wanted and being needed. And when he understands that she wants him but does not need him, it creates a deeper level of respect. Respect is the foundation of emotional attachment for men, even when they don't openly admit it. Self-respect also changes how a woman responds to disappointment. Instead of lashing out or internalizing blame, she remains composed. She doesn't chase closure or force conversations that the other person isn't ready to have. That composure is unsettling to someone who expects emotional chaos. It forces a man to sit with his actions and their impact. He feels the absence of drama, and in that silence, accountability grows. Boundaries create emotional impact because they remove the illusion of endless chances. A man begins to understand that love does not mean unlimited tolerance. It means mutual effort, consistency, and care. When he recognizes that a woman will walk away from what doesn't serve her, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, it leaves a lasting impression. He doesn't just remember her presence, he remembers how she made him reflect on himself. A woman who doesn't chase becomes unforgettable because she changes the emotional rhythm a man is used to. Most men expect pursuit when they pull away. They expect repeated messages, emotional explanations, and reassurance-seeking behavior. When that pursuit doesn't come, it creates a silence that speaks louder than words. That silence isn't cold or manipulative. It's rooted in self-control and self-respect. And that difference lingers in a man's mind far longer than attention ever could. Not chasing doesn't mean lacking interest. It means refusing to abandon dignity for validation. A woman who holds her ground understands that real connection doesn't require convincing. She doesn't try to prove her worth through effort or sacrifice. Instead, she allows the man to experience her absence when he chooses distance. That absence becomes noticeable because it's unfamiliar. He expected pursuit, and instead he finds space. That space gives him room to think, and thinking leads to emotional attachment. Men often process feelings through loss or the fear of loss. When a woman doesn't chase, she introduces that possibility early. He starts replaying interactions, remembering how she made him feel, how easy it was to talk to her, how peaceful her presence felt. Because she didn't overwhelm him with attention, her energy remains distinct. He associates her with calm rather than chaos, strength rather than need. That association makes her stand out in a world full of emotional noise. A woman who doesn't chase also communicates confidence without speaking. Her actions say she trusts herself and her value. She believes that if someone wants her, they will show up. This belief removes desperation from the dynamic. Desperation often pushes people away, even when the feelings are genuine. Confidence, on the other hand, draws people in. A man begins to feel curious, then invested, because he senses that her life is full, whether he's present or not. When he realizes she isn't waiting around for him to decide, his perception shifts. He understands that time with her is a choice, not an entitlement. That realization adds weight to the connection. Every interaction becomes more intentional. He becomes more aware of how he shows up because he knows she won't chase him into consistency. She allows him to reveal his level of interest through his effort. Being unforgettable isn't about doing more, it's about knowing when to step back. A woman who doesn't chase leaves room for a man to step forward. And if he doesn't, she continues moving forward without resentment. That grace stays with him. Long after the moment has passed, he remembers the woman who didn't beg, didn't plead, and didn't chase. He remembers her because she respected herself enough to walk in her own direction. And that kind of strength is rare. Knowing your worth makes a man question his own value in ways that go deeper than surface attraction. When a woman is secure in who she is, she doesn't look to a man to define her importance. She doesn't need constant reassurance, approval, or validation to feel complete. That independence changes the emotional balance. A man quickly realizes he is not the center of her world, and instead of pushing him away, that realization draws him in. A woman who knows her worth carries herself differently. She doesn't rush into emotional vulnerability just to create closeness. She allows connection to grow naturally without forcing intimacy or commitment. This patience signals confidence. A man senses that she is not afraid of losing him because she knows she will be okay either way. That lack of fear creates tension, not distance. It makes him wonder where he stands in her life and whether he is doing enough to earn a place there. When a man encounters a woman who won't shrink herself to be accepted, he begins to reflect on himself. He asks questions he may have avoided before. Am I showing up consistently? Am I offering enough effort? Am I adding value to her life or simply taking up space? These questions arise because her standards are visible through her actions. She doesn't announce them or demand anything. She simply lives by them, and that quiet strength becomes a mirror. A woman who knows her worth does not compete for attention. She doesn't compare herself to other women or worry about being replaced. That self-assurance forces a man to look inward. If he wants to be with her, he understands that he must bring his best self, not his excuses. He realizes that she is not impressed by charm alone. She notices consistency, honesty, and effort. This awareness challenges him to rise or step aside. What truly shifts a man's perspective is recognizing that she chooses him, not needs him. Need creates dependency, but choice creates significance. When he understands that she is with him because she wants to be, not because she fears being alone, he begins to value the connection more deeply. He sees that losing her would not break her, but it would leave a noticeable absence in his life. Knowing her worth allows a woman to walk away from situations that don't honor her. That willingness to leave without bitterness or drama is powerful. It tells a man that her self-respect is non-negotiable. And when a man stands in the presence of a woman who values herself that deeply, he can't help but question whether he is living up to the standard she naturally sets. Calm confidence is more powerful than emotional reactions because it shifts control of the situation without force. When a woman remains calm, especially in moments that would normally trigger emotional responses, it creates a presence that is impossible to ignore. Many men are accustomed to emotional reactions as signals, anger, tears, accusations, or repeated explanations. These reactions give them something familiar to respond to or retreat from. Calm confidence removes that familiarity and replaces it with strength. A woman who responds instead of reacts shows emotional maturity. She doesn't allow her feelings to dictate her behavior in the heat of the moment. This doesn't mean she suppresses emotions. It means she understands them well enough to manage them. That self-control communicates security. A man begins to realize that he cannot provoke chaos or confusion to gain leverage. Her calm becomes grounding, and that grounding shifts the emotional balance in her favor. When conflict arises, a calm woman listens more than she speaks. She chooses her words carefully and doesn't rush to fill silence. Silence, when paired with confidence, creates space for reflection. A man starts to hear his own thoughts more clearly. He becomes aware of his tone, his choices, and his accountability. Emotional reactions often escalate situations, but calm confidence slows everything down, forcing clarity to surface. Calm confidence also prevents a woman from over-explaining herself. She doesn't feel the need to justify her boundaries or prove her intentions. She states what she feels and what she expects with clarity, then allows her actions to reinforce her words.